cars down the backstretch. Jimmy Horton has slowed remarkably on the backstretch. Here is Doug Wolfgang going to the high side of the racetrack, passing slower cars.
One of the cars that apparently has slowed, we're getting now some reports from our spotters around the racetrack, is one of the top 10 cars. We also caught a quick glimpse of the number 21 car of Ron Schumann in that battle with Wolf and Jacobs. We believe it's Jimmy Horton, who apparently has had some engine problems. We had been told that they were working on the engine during the break. There's the cars coming down the front stretch. Horton had done well in this race, had moved up from 15th to 6th, and apparently now Jimmy Horton has dropped out.
Well, his car is on the inside racetrack. There is a smaller track inside of this mile oval, and Jimmy Horton's car is on the inside of that of the mile track and running very slowly down in turn number 4, headed for the pit area. So Jimmy Horton out of competition. 10 laps to go. Here comes Doug Wolfgang down the main straightaway. Keith Kaufman continues to run in second position, and Jeff Swindell is third, and the interval between first and second is about 2 seconds at this point.
Now, back in 1976, before there was an organized World of Outlaws, this guy, Doug Wolfgang, was sort of the unofficial king of the Outlaws. Here in 1983, he is ranked second in the points. He is ranked third in dollars won. He has won $83,000. As we find Jimmy Horton, as Bob told you, is on the service road on the inside of this 1 mile oval. And the driver from New Jersey, who had done so well here, moving up from mid-pack to run in the top 5, is having his day ended. Going back to the Wolfgang story, he's had 2 wins this year. That ranks him, by the way, 4th. And as we commented earlier, he had led 98 laps coming into here. So Wolfgang will go over $100,000 if he is able to hold on these final 9 laps here at Syracuse today.
Going back very briefly to Jimmy Horton, he was injured in a modified accident here at Syracuse, New York earlier this week, but as Larry indicated, ran very well in the sprint cars. Well, we told you that drivers come from all over the nation here to Syracuse, and here's a USAC driver, Sheldon Kinzer, driving car number 1, indicating his championship as he is passed by Doug Wolfgang, lapped by Wolfgang. Sheldon Kinzer from Bloomington, Indiana.
Well, Sheldon had already gone a lap down before the break, so this just has not been his day. But I'll tell you, to his credit, he's been in a race car with the wing on top very few times. Matter of fact, I think twice this season he's been in a race car with a wing on top, concentrating on the championship dirt car series and the USAC sprint car series for the 1983 season. But he's told us that he may be looking at other venues for 1984. This may be a harbinger of things to come. Sheldon Kinzer in a World of Outlaws race. He told us that he's looking favorably at some of their main events and major races for next season.
Well, of course, Sheldon has some ill feeling, shall we say, toward the United States Auto Club because he was disqualified from a victory at Eldora Speedway earlier this year. So perhaps Sheldon looking for other sanctioning organizations in which to run in 1984. There's the leader, Doug Wolfgang, once again off of turn number 4, and another car has come in contact with the wall. That is Richard Lupo from Hanover, Pennsylvania, and the yellow comes out once again.
Well, Lupo is a guy who ran the United Racing Club, URC, for quite a number of years and was successful in that avenue of approach. And Dick Bergman, you've been in a position to observe Richard Lupo these years. How about it?
Well, he certainly is a journeyman race driver. You wouldn't find a guy like Bobby Allen that's really an experienced sprint car driver owner putting anybody but the best in the car. But this afternoon, Lupo's definitely had his troubles. Somewhere early in the race, he obviously contacted some sort of debris or a wheel got into his nose wing because it was all pushed against the front of the car. 2 laps before the accident, he came by us here on the home straightaway, running very slowly. Obviously, it was a mechanical problem that caused his difficulty here this afternoon.
Well, I'm not so sure about what he will be able to be pushed back into the race. The tow truck pushes him away, and perhaps Richard Lupo will be able to fall into the tail of the field and continue in competition. Now, these laps that we are running right now do not count. The pace car is moving toward the head of the field. So when we go racing again, we're going to have an exciting finish as all cars now begin to bunch in together. The leader, Doug Wolfgang, Keith Kaufman second, Jeff Swindell is third, and fourth is Rocky. Back to racing. Doug Wolfgang still setting the pace. As we watch him come out of turn number 2, Keith Kaufman and Jeff Swindell running second and third and trying to catch this man who has been leading this event since the early stages. Only 5 more miles to go.
If Wolfgang can win this race, he'll be the first man to ever win Syracuse as far as the Super Nationals go twice. Nobody has ever been able to duplicate their victory here, but Wolfgang, as a previous winner, could become the first one.
4th and 5th position battle here involving Steve Kinzer and Rocky Hodges. Rocky has run very well, but Steve Kinzer in car number 11 has also, and the Kinzer right now in 4th position, with Hodges dropping back to 5th.
Hodges has had a great day today. Nobody really expected Rocky to be among the top 10, but he qualified in the top 10. There goes Steve Kinzer, looking to the high side of cousin Sheldon Kinzer, putting a lap on Sheldon. Nobody expected Rocky Hodges to be in the top 10, but he's been there all weekend long. He's a driver from Iowa who says that he's looking toward the circuit here in the eastern part of, or rather down in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. He may move there in 1984 and concentrate in an area that he feels is really one of the real heartbeats of sprint car racing in America.
We have less than 2 laps to go as Doug Wolfgang has already crossed the start-finish line, and there Steve gets by his cousin Sheldon cleanly, and now Steve Kinzer looking for 3rd position. And now Rocky Hodges involved in a race with Danny Smith.
Well, Hodges working from a disadvantage, very limited amount of experience on a mile racetrack. By the way, he's a guy who, when you see him in the pit area, looks like a throwback to the sprint car and IndyCar drivers of the 1950s and 60s. A little bit like a Marine, but looks like he's here to stay as far as being a top-flight sprint car racer.
Looks like it's going to be an easy win for Doug Wolfgang. He is in turn number 3. 2nd place, Keith Kaufman in the middle of the backstretch. And we're on the last lap of the event, off of turn number 4. Here comes Doug Wolfgang, who wins the Syracuse Super Nationals. Now we watch the race for 2nd position. 2nd is Kaufman. 3rd is Swindell. And 4th place, we'll watch this battle as it comes off of turn number 4, Rocky Hodges and Danny Smith.
That was the duo going at it for 5th, 6th, and 7th right there. It goes Smith, Jacobs, and I guess Shane Carson is in there. I think Shane was able to stay on the lead lap. No, correct that. Check that. Shane Carson had lost a lap before we went red at the midpoint. So even though Carson crossed with a couple of other top 10 competitors, he won't get that position. But there he is, the winner, Doug Wolfgang, the first man to ever double here at Syracuse in a sprint car.
Well, when he isn't on the racetrack, he enjoys racquetball, and in fact is very much a physical fitness expert. Doug Wolfgang from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. 2nd in the point standings in the World of Outlaws, but he has never won a championship with them. But he wins the Syracuse Super Nationals this year. Doug Wolfgang, there he is on the main straightaway. Also, the 2nd and 3rd place cars pull up alongside him, Keith Kaufman and Jeff Swindell.
And the count goes to 4 for the World of Outlaws and 3 for the Eastern Sprint Car Stars. As we told you at the top of the show, it's been kind of a little private battle, private war, if you will, between the World of Outlaws and Eastern Pennsylvania sprinters. And you see an Eastern Pennsylvania sprinter there in the middle of the front stretch, finishing in a runner-up. And Jeff Swindell sits in 3rd position at the end of the race.
And he has a little bit of damage there to the front spoiler as he came in contact with something out there on the racetrack during the event.
Swindell may well have been one of those who was involved when the wing was flying around on the front stretch. I don't remember exactly where Jeff was positioned in relationship to Van May when that incident occurred.
We'll be back to talk with Doug Wolfgang, the winner of our race, in just a moment. The top 4 finishers: Keith Kaufman was 2nd, Jeff Swindell 3rd, Steve Kinzer finished 4th. In victory lane, Dick Berggren is with the winner of the Syracuse Super Nationals, Doug Wolfgang.
Doug, you look relaxed. It looked like a Sunday drive out there for you. Was it easy or was it hard?
Well, actually, today was about the easiest I've had it all year long. I haven't had one of my banner seasons. We run a lot of 2nds and 3rds, but I've only got about 3 or 4 World of Outlaw wins and probably 10 mains or 11 mains all year. But I would have to say this was a Sunday drive for me today.
Tires. A lot of people stick with one brand. How about you?
Well, I would like to congratulate all the tire brands. They all have a tire that's good at one time or another. And I would have liked to have been on maybe one brand or another, but we couldn't come up with the right staggers, and we had all 4 brands, McCrary, Firestone, Hoosier, and Goodyear on today in the feature.
A different tire on every wheel.
Yep, different brand on every wheel.
Now, before this race started, Doug, a lot of people were talking about big blocks as being able to really dominate here, yet you had one of the Outlaw-style small block engines. Was the horsepower an advantage, or how did you get away with winning this race with all that horsepower behind you?
Well, there's 2 different ways of calling horsepower. There's usable horsepower and non-usable horsepower. Fortunately, my small block, I was able to use every ounce of its horsepower everywhere on the racetrack today. Not only at fast speed down at the end of the straightaway, but at starts it would take off good. And I think big blocks aren't all usable horsepower. There's somewhere on the racetrack where sometime the motors don't run, they won't take off, or they blubber at the end or something.
Doug Wolfgang, fella says it was easy at 150 miles an hour. We're going to throw it upstairs, and I'm going to see if I can find Jeff Swindell and see how his day went.
Well, it did look easy for Doug Wolfgang after Sammy Swindell got out of the way.
Well, the CK Spurlock car, the magenta, purple, and scarlet trim number 18 back in victory lane.
Well, we only had 2 leaders, Sammy Swindell and Doug Wolfgang, and 1 lead change during the event as we check our race summary. And a couple of accidents in the event, but no serious injuries to any driver.
Bobby Davis, Van May getting the outside fence. By the way, Wolfgang is ranked 3rd in the all-time list of victories for the World of Outlaws. He has 50 wins now, trailing Sammy Swindell, who has 81, and Steve Kinzer, who has won 116 times in the World of Outlaws Skull Bandits Shootout. And incidentally, those 116 victories for Steve Kinzer, that's a clear 33% of all the World of Outlaw features ever conducted.
Keith Kaufman finished 2nd. We indicated he's already on his way out of here to go to another race. 3rd place, Jeff Swindell. Dick?
Yeah, I'm with Jeff Swindell. Jeff, it looks like somebody punched your race car right in the nose. What happened?
Well, when that guy without the wing down there hit the wall, one of the cars pulled around in front of me and locked the brakes up on the yellow, and wasn't nowhere for me to go. It was on the yellow, but, you know, I don't know why he wanted to do that.
How fast were you going when you ran into him?
50 miles an hour.
And how badly did that upset your race car? Could you have won if this had not happened?
Well, if we'd been up front, we could have, but without that, it didn't make it possible to stay with them when we got to lap traffic to get by. But it had a bad push in it coming off, and I couldn't run it wide open then towards the, coming off the corners, and it just messed everything up.
So it was better before the crash for sure.
Oh, ain't no doubt about that. I think we'd have been there. We made a bunch of changes on the car, and it's a totally different sprint car, and Nance is doing a really good job with it. And I think that we would have been there, but we just had to start too far back and a little bit of bad luck.
How about the aerodynamics, Jeff? Did that play a key role in your ability to finish so far up front today?
Well, I think so. When we got up here, we set the car up for the normal deal with the regular body and everything, and it messed us up a little bit because this thing puts down such a force on the ground with it. It makes a lot of difference, and we had to change the car up a bunch from qualifying to now. I think if we'd have known what we knew now, we could have been a lot better for qualifying. We might have got to start up front and been a lot better off.
And last year, Jeff Swindell learned something here at Syracuse, also finished up front. Watch out for this guy in the 1984 Super Nationals.
Well, Jeff Swindell has never won a World of Outlaw race, but he has been a consistent up-front finisher since he took over the car that he has driven. By the way, that used to be driven by his brother, Sammy. Back with more in a moment. Winner Doug Wolfgang, but there were several drivers that finished behind Doug that made excellent showings, Larry.
Well, Danny Smith, who came home in 5th position, started the race in 14th, but he really wasn't that much of a threat in the first half of the race. They obviously made the right adjustments. Some other notable moves: Jack Hewitt from 26th starting position in his USAC chassis with a World of Outlaw engine came home in 10th, but the $200 bonus for the most improved positions, that $200 award from Red Lobsters, from 38th to a 16th finish for Shane Carson.
As we look at the top 20, we will say thank you to Dick Berggren, who covered the pit area, and Larry Newber. This is Bob Jenkins saying so long, everyone, from the State Fairgrounds in Syracuse, New York.